Welcome to Genuine Life Recovery. We're here to help you and your loved ones overcome addictions and other addiction-related mental health challenges. In this show, we dive into the physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual aspects of addiction, mental health, recovery, family dynamics, codependency, and more. You can listen on your favorite app or at jodystevens.org. Hey friends, welcome back to Genuine Life Recovery and our Serenity Series. In this series, we're diving into Serenity, the Serenity Prayer, and how in the world do we apply it to recovery, mental health challenges, grief, pain, loss, life troubles. So that's what we're going to be exploring through the series. And, because so many of us, especially new in recovery, you go in and you read the Serenity Prayer, and it's this big part of everything, even church, surrender. And of course, most of the time, we're not surrendering anything. So how do we do it? What does it all mean? So I'm excited for my friend Lisa Tannert to be back on the show. She was featured in episode 138, which was From Rock Bottom to Recovery, Insights from a Sobriety Survivor. So go back and listen to Lisa's story. It's amazing. And Lisa, I know you have over 20 years sober. Lisa's a speaker, recovery advocate, and an author. The book, I was looking on your website, Soul Eclipsed. I know when we first chatted, you were still Is it out yet?
It is not out yet.
Okay.
It is not out yet, so hopefully next year.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So for those that didn't see the other episode, just kind of give us the skinny on just your world and what you're doing right now as far as.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, the skinny.
I've
been sober.
Skinny on your whole life, like what's the 5-minute version?
Right. Well, you know what? Before alcohol was running the show, and now God is, and that's about how it was.
Nice.
Alcohol made all my decisions before. It dictated the course of everything, and now I try to let that be my higher power instead of the substance. And It's working much, much better this way. Much better.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Well, that concept, and this is like a, Christian show, so I don't want to swear, but there's that, what they say about fear, false evidence appearing real, or F everything and run. And I think serenity in our addiction meant that. Like it meant, I'm afraid, I'm scared, I'm going to get drunk, screw it. It's all over. I don't have the courage to do anything, whereas serenity and sobriety, it's a very different thing, and it's not about giving up. So I think a lot, especially guys, right? They come in and they're just like, serenity, higher power? Are you kidding? That's for the weak, but actually it's for the strong, don't you think?
Right?
I mean,
Right. It's so true. We think of surrender as a weakness, or as giving up, the prize fighter who, stays down instead of clawing his way back up on the ropes to fight some more.
Right.
And really the most courageous thing we can do is surrender.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time to get to that place, though, where you actually believe that. And even now, like on a daily basis, the act of surrendering, that isn't about giving up. That's where we get our power. By surrendering, we have access to a higher power, right? Instead of just functioning on our own.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I love that concept. You may be powerless, but you're never helpless, right? Because there are many times, right, where we are powerless. And that's where, I'm sure that's what brought you into recovery, right? That's where we finally run out of solutions. And it's like, I give up. And then God's like, oh, okay, well, now I can do something here. Because he's not going to take our power from us. We give it up for something greater, right, that can help us. And then that continues throughout our whole life because, once you got sober, you had to surrender to everything else that comes along. And when we say surrender, we'll get into like figuring out what we surrender and what we don't. And, that can be a challenge initially. what can I control and what can't I control, right?
Right. It's a huge challenge initially. And I think the longer you're sober, the more you're willing to give up and the more you're willing to surrender. Because
Yeah.
in the beginning, it was hard just to surrender. I mean, we have such big egos and we're self-sufficient and we're strong-willed and we're stubborn and we're all these things and we're going to figure it out and I can do it myself and no, thank you. I don't need anybody. And, until we get to that place where, what, on my own, I can't do this. I do need help. And we're willing to ask for help, which, for the prideful is really, really a challenging thing to do.
Yeah.
To be able to admit that, wow, I got myself into this mess and, and I can't get myself out of it.
Right?
How did this happen?
Yeah, without God, without friends and support. So here's and it goes against everything really most of us have
That we're
been
taught.
And it's not like, be surrender, Johnny.
Yeah, never give up.
Fight
a good fight. Yeah.
Right? So here's the Serenity Prayer in its fullness, okay? God, grant me the serenity to accept, right? Acceptance is the key. The things that I can't change, courage to change what I can. That's my line, like, God, give me some courage, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then it goes on, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting, oh my gosh, there's that word again, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace. Well, that's a new one, right? Taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, right? And trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life, supremely happy with him forever in the next. So when you really start to break that down, you're like, oh, that kind of tells a different story. But for you, how would you define serenity and how it applied in your recovery journey?
Well, I think one of the things that I love about the Serenity Prayer is it's the program right there. That's sobriety. Like it has absolutely saved my life, that prayer. I have said that prayer more times than I could even guess, or estimate. I said it all the time in early sobriety. I still say it every day. This taking this world as it is rather than as I would have it be. That's the big challenge for me on a daily basis, because I look around and think, it's not supposed to be this way. I wasn't, this isn't how I would have had it be. And people aren't behaving the way I would have them behave. And, the world isn't going according to my plan. And, it's the acceptance, like the surrender, the initial surrender, right? Like, oh, grant me the serenity to accept things. So until we accept our alcoholism, until we accept our current situation, right? Our circumstances. Like I had gotten to the place where I was homeless. I had nothing and no one left. So it was hard to accept that I had done that to myself, that was where my best thinking landed me, basically in the gutter. Like how is this my life? So really accepting, like, this is where I'm at and this is where I have to start from. And in the beginning, I was almost 40 years old. I had a child. I didn't have, that's a scary place to be. So, the acceptance was huge. I have a friend who always says, with acceptance comes peace. And I think that initial peace, early on, it was just about letting go of resentments. I had so much anger and so much resentment, and my mind was such a busy place.
Yeah.
And, the judgment, looking around and judging life as like, oh, it's not supposed to be this way.
Yeah.
Or, I'm not supposed to be this way. Or, God, you gave me a lousy hand and, this isn't fair, right? I was always like, this isn't fair. I try so hard. It's not fair. And, what I deserve, that was another dangerous one, the word deserve. Just initially it was, this is where I've got to start from. doing what's in front of me, the courage at that point to change the things that I could. Well, that was go to meetings, stay sober, do the steps, get the job, do what's in front of me, do what people are suggesting. Listen to other people for a change, right?
Right?
Take some help, take some guidance. It's like you clearly don't know what you're doing. Maybe you should listen to somebody who's been there, who's done it before.
Yeah.
So, and then today it's the same thing. I've got to give it to God on a daily basis. So I surrender, not just every morning, but kind of all day, every day. Because the more I can give to him, the easier my life is going to be. The more I can trust that everything is exactly as it should be, the happier I am, right? And if I'm not happy, joyous, and free, then I'm not looking at it the way God is, right? It's my perception, which is one of the things I can change. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I love what it tells us, in the Bible is don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't be afraid. My peace I give you. Whether you're Christian or the higher power, I do not give as the world gives. It's an internal peace, I think. I think so much of addiction is this external, where he's saying, look, it's got to be in you through me, because this world's not going to get any better, And so, like you said, there's times when, right, the election goes the way we want, and times it doesn't, and but all these things, and I'm not talking about like severe grief or things like that. We should grieve, but if we are so, angry or this or that over like an external thing, then I think that's when we're not getting into that place of serenity, or we're not self-reflecting over what's triggering this. You know what I mean? Did you find what were some of the how did you have to practice acceptance in and out of recovery, particularly regarding things that you just couldn't change? And I think that the hardest, because I always say people that are healthy in life and recovery have this ability to self-reflect, and self-reflect can be good and not so good, because we have to look at all those defects of character, accept those, right? And then as we go along in our sobriety, good things happen, and bad things happen, and we have to kind of accept them both. So how did that play out for you?
Well,
or maybe one or two examples. Right.
It's been a long process, right?
Yeah.
It's been a long process, and it's been a practice. So whereas in the beginning maybe I wasn't as surrendered as I am today. Today I live in a pretty good place, and it's developing trust, right? Trusting God. So I've gotten to the place where I know that his plan for me is better than my own, and I have a lot of evidence to prove that, because we know where I landed. So I trust that his plan for me is better than mine. And so when things aren't going the way I would have them go, I have to believe that they're actually going the way that is best for my evolution, for my growth, for me, even though I don't see it. I think one of the biggest things is I'm not in a position to judge anything, because all I can see is my piece of the puzzle, right? I have my little piece. And if you back up and look at the whole puzzle and all the thousands of pieces, then maybe you would make a different decision, right? But I don't have all the information. So it's easy for me to, well, I shouldn't say it's easy for me. It's taken a long time for me to get to the place where I have to trust that, that the outcome, I have to do the work and leave the outcome up to God, right?
Right.
And there are times when I get so attached to the outcome that I want that I block off the possibilities. You know what I mean? I lose sight of like the bigger picture and what God might actually have planned for me, because I'm so focused on, the crack in the sidewalk that I want to fix, right? It's like a beautiful garden and I'm staring at the crack because, someone could trip. just focused on the problem instead of everything that's so beautiful. And I think that's what you were saying too. And I think the Bible is saying this. When we look for God everywhere, look for the beauty in everything, look for love in all of our fellows and all of the people that we encounter, that's what we're going to find.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're looking for,
Right.
if we've got this attitude like, life sucks, well, that's what we're going to find.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and there's two kind of sets of people, like, in recovery. A lot of times we tend to be spectrum on this side or that. There tends to be some extremes. Some people are very outwardly sort of trying to actually control people, places, and things. And then they have to sort of, okay, God, like, what do I need to give up here? And then there's people like me where I was like, I don't get it because I never try to control anybody or anything. I'm kind of just a big fat baby coward. But then I realized I would obsess and obsess and obsess over the way things are, and I remember distinctly hearing God say, not in an audible voice, I wish it was, but basically just, you spend so much time obsessing over the things that you can't control that you miss the opportunity to change what you can. Right. And so a lot of times I think the committee in the head, right, whatever you want to call it, the committee, the enemy that's getting in, and it's going around and around, and then we need 20 opinions, and then we just get this massive pile of confusion, and having to try to sort that out. How was that for you? Were you more of an external or an internal, an obsessor, or I'm just going to call and make that happen? Like that would be more my husband. Like, I'd be like, no, don't do it. And then he in his sobriety would actually be working to change the things that he could. And I would be like, no, I'm too afraid. And so, it just depends on, like, are you I need to pull back, or I need the courage to move?
Well, first of all, I'm just like you with the obsessing on things. Like, I will latch onto something and spin out and make myself crazy over something that I can't control, right? Yeah. And, we used to say the Serenity Prayer with my son every night when he got into bed, and talking to him about, how to discern, like, what is it that you can change and what can't you change? What's in your power and what isn't? And, it really comes down to all I can control is my own attitude, my own beliefs, my own, choices, but just, it's all personal, right? Like, if it doesn't involve me, I can't really control it.
Right. Yeah.
And that might be a little too, final, but for the most part, people, places, things, anything external to me is beyond my control.
Right.
So it's accepting, it's shifting my perspective. Like, for the most part, I know that if I'm discontented or unhappy, first of all, it usually means I'm focused on myself, which is never a good thing. Yeah. And it also means I'm looking at it differently than God is. Like, he's seeing the situation different than I am, or I wouldn't be unhappy, right? So looking at it a different way so that I'm seeing it in a bigger light, I suppose.
Yeah. And then having the courage to change what we can. I think for me, that's been a challenge. And so a lot of times I think with addiction, we struggle because we want to change a lot of things and we don't like the way things are, but our self-esteem, for me, it's like so in the toilet that we're afraid to ask for what we need. So how has that played out? Because it's like, like God's saying, well, I can't, if you want more from your employer, you're going to have to ask. See, I wouldn't ask. I would just be mistreated, and then I'd go home and I'd get drunk and, act like life was so bad, when in reality, it's like, if you want a better pay or a better job, you got to do it. And so often that drives the addiction because we're just afraid. So the courage piece, was that something that was a challenge for you?
So I never knew when I was drinking that alcoholism was all about fear, or that I was living in fear. right? Like that's what it is. It's the fear of life. It's like I was afraid
Right.
of everything. And
Yeah.
if you'd told me that, I would have said, no, I'm not. I'm not afraid of anything. But
Especially when I'm drunk. I
right,
do
I was going
everything.
to say, as soon as I
I can
drank, I
change a
was,
lot of things after a couple shots, right? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And so I had no idea it was fear. And then, yeah, the courage to change things. I mean, even sobering up, that wasn't about courage to change. That was running out of options and not having, any,
Right.
no other alternative. From there, I'm still in fear a lot, a lot, a lot. It's kind of my
Yeah.
natural state, and I've come to believe that, if I'm in fear, I'm operating from my ego, right? I'm in my head. It's all ego stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I'm trusting and coming from my heart and spirit instead, then I don't have to be so afraid. But fear has been the governing force in my life, up until I got sober, and now I'm trying, to live fearlessly. But that's human. The fear is human, right? That's everybody
Yeah.
has an ego, and we get afraid. Admitting
Yeah.
it is a progress, and then recognizing it and knowing it's never really going to go away, but doing stuff anyway, right? Like I stayed in a lot of
Yes.
jobs where I wasn't happy because I was afraid I wouldn't get anything else. Or I've stayed, you know what I mean? I did a lot of
Yeah.
things because I was afraid that leaving would be worse, or that I wouldn't get better, or that I didn't deserve more, or whatever it was. So fear has absolutely, been huge in my life. And that's why I think the Serenity Prayer has been so helpful, because the more I can give to God, I don't have to be afraid if he's in charge, right? Like I don't have to be afraid. Anything he calls me to do, I'll
Yeah.
show up and do. The problem for me has been like, well, was I really called to do that? Is that God's will or mine? Because I've gotten those
Yeah.
confused for a long time. Like, is that really something I want to do? And I'm saying it's God's will. But
Right. Yeah. Well, and he gives us a lot of leeway
yeah,
to screw up, to make our own choices. And there's a beauty in that, because like even in therapy, like it's all about autonomy. He wants us
right,
to be, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? Right, right. Go out and get it. And then if it doesn't work, then what have you learned through that? And I wish it wasn't like that. I
right,
wish, like, can't you just write it on the wall? But,
right. Skywriting. I always wanted
I know.
skywriting.
But I mean, like if you came into therapy, like, and you're super codependent and stuff, and they
Yeah,
started telling you what to do, that's actually an ethical violation. So it's really about growing ourselves, but it's so hard because, again, depending on our race, or if there was trauma, or if there was abuse, it's like
yeah,
accepting, this is my family. If it weren't for God, I wouldn't have had a chance. I see 20-year-olds that are doing it, and I'm still afraid. And
yeah.
that's where you have to just, like you said, accept it, step out in faith. And then, the prayer is like, give me the courage to just go when I'm afraid. Right? Just do
Right.
it. Do it.
Do it anyway. Right.
Depending on your personality, you may be one that's like, when do I need to just not do it? But I
Well, and
think,
then I think too, like you were saying, we don't know until we know. Like we don't see
yeah,
things until we see them. So even the whole, you were saying you didn't have control issues. I never thought I had control issues,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then I found out that control meant wanting my own way, and I thought, oh my gosh, well of course I have control issues then, because I want things to go my way. But I didn't
yeah,
know that was control. I mean,
right.
I suppose that's even some of the most obvious things, if you don't see it, you don't see it, right? It's like the ink blots. Until you see
Mm-hmm.
it, it's not there. But then once you do see it, you can't not see it anymore.
Right. I mean, everything is a grasp at control, obsessive
Yeah,
compulsive, disorder, codependency. If I take on everybody else's thing, I can be relevant and fix. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, borderline. If I have this emotional situation, or you know what I mean, like I'm trying to fix we're all trying to fix what's broken, I think. And I think kind of what, like the whole recreate your childhood and all those sorts of things we talk about in the therapeutic sense where we're trying constantly to fix the empty piece. And I feel like what God's saying is in this life, I'm here for you, but it's you can't always fix the God-shaped hole, but you can accept that it's there, the pain, whatever it is, and then go on with that hole and still have a beautiful life, right? And that's,
Right.
I think, when serenity comes. Are there things for you that where,
Well, I
the
just feel like
difficulty and yeah, accepting things like family, personal situations where, you just couldn't control them, but you had to accept it.
well, I feel like there's a lot there's a lot there. So the
I
spiritual
know.
axiom is also very helpful for me. So if there's anything that's bothering me about anyone in my family, knowing that it's really me, like everything
Yeah,
comes back to me, like, right, if somebody's triggering me, well, what is it that's unhealed, like you were saying, what's unhealed in me
right.
that he's triggering right now? um, because nobody else can really affect me unless I allow them to, right? So it's
Right.
always how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's
Right.
crazy. And then I think, how do you or how do we discern what we can and can't control? Is there a, so I think initially that can be challenging for us. And sometimes there's gray areas. One of the things I say is, if you write it out, I mean, I think you were talking a little bit about that. Like, okay, so maybe on the left are the things I have control of, maybe on the right, oops, things I don't. But then maybe there's kind of an ethical gray area where we don't really know. How have you found? I've found if I don't know, I back up, pray about it, and find that within 24 to 48 hours, I have an answer. God
Nice.
gives me an answer, but
Right?
it's
Ask and it is received, right? Ask and you receive. I have a hard time with that. Like I
yeah.
make decisions and then I second guess them, or I will think I know what I want, and then like I go back and forth a lot.
Oh yeah,
And it's
yeah.
the fear
Hmm.
again, right? Like I'll think, this is what I want to do, but is this the right thing to do? And I don't know. I never know. So I do exactly like you said, like sit with it and wait, or sit with the discomfort. Sometimes even just asking
Yeah,
God, help me sit with the discomfort.
yeah,
And then when you know, you know. And I find that if I'm in turmoil over something, some decision, and I go back and forth, or make the decision and it doesn't feel right, that's probably my decision, right? Rather than what God would have me do. And if I just know something, like if I just know, then that's God,
yeah.
right? Because it just feels, I feel at peace with the decision. It's like, okay, that's the right thing to do. So I think you can feel the difference. And I think it's a lot head or heart, right? Like if I'm in my head,
Mm, yeah,
I'm interfering. If I'm trying to figure it out, I'm getting in the way. Whereas if I just let go, sit back, and then, and that question, right? Am I making this decision out of love or fear? And if it's fear, it's the wrong call. And if it's love, then that's probably the right thing,
wow. I
right?
love that. That's beautiful because you're right. There is a piece there,
Yeah.
rather than the spin cycle of confusion. And that's,
Yeah.
I've spent most of my life confused.
Right. And the obsessing, like you
Yeah,
said, and it's exhausting. It's
yeah.
exhausting, and we get nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, the enemy brings confusion, and when we're really confused, and that's, I think, like you said, that means we just need to let go, because we're definitely on the wrong track, as far as you know what I mean. Like for me, it was
Yeah.
always, I don't know what to do, so try and get 500 opinions. And then I was more confused rather than
Right.
just, and again, it's like God saying, well, let's you and I, like, what do you want? So I want to end with this and just kind of have you comment on, I love this from Alcoholics Anonymous, the acceptance part. And acceptance is the key to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, some situation, what does it say? Some situation
Displeasing to me.
Displeasing to me. Thank you. I usually have it written here, and I can find no peace and no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, my addiction, whatever it was, I could not stay sober. I could find no peace. I need to look more at what needs to be changed in me rather than what needs to be changed in the world. I think I didn't say that exactly right, but
I love that passage.
It's beautiful.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's the answer to everything, every problem, always. Acceptance is the key. And that's me looking around and thinking things aren't the way they're supposed to be, right? Because that's right where Shakespeare says all the world's a stage, right?
Yeah, I was just
We're all just players and actors. Well, I want to be the star, right? But I'm the one that's supposed to be sweeping the stage, and I don't want to sweep the stage. So
right?
I'm supposed to be the star. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's acceptance and accepting who and what. And I love nothing happens in God's world by mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Because that means everything that we've gone through served a purpose. Right.
Yeah.
And I love that because I feel like I wasted so much time by, because of my drinking and my drugging and just like what I did with my life. But now God is using all of that to help other people. So there was a purpose in it.
Right.
And who would have thought at the time that my darkest secrets would become my greatest assets, right?
I know. Yeah. Trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will. So, well,
such
Lisa,
great stuff.
I know.
So much good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you for hanging out. Any kind of words of wisdom for people maybe watching that they're either struggling with addiction or they're just trying to sort of grasp this concept of how do I let go?
I tell you what
let
helped
go
me
and
a
let God,
lot,
right?
Right? Let go and let God. What helped me a lot in the beginning was thy will not mine be done. Just thy will not mine be done. Thy will not mine be done. Which, in the beginning made it a lot easier to do all the things that I needed to do. Because it's hard being sober. You know what I mean? When you first sober up and your life is a mess, it's like you look around and need to drink more than ever before. Because, look at this wreckage. To even just consider it. So just to do the next right thing and, thy will not mine be done, thy will not mine be done. And what else was huge is realizing, that it wasn't all just about me, that there were so many people that I was hurting and we think we're the only ones, and we think, that my addiction, my problem is mine. Well, no, I was affecting a lot of other people and hurting other people. And so when I finally got right-sized, with God and with everyone else and started, considering other people instead of just thinking of myself, that was huge. And I think when we're stuck in the disease and in that victim mentality, it's like what you said, becoming accountable for our own actions and our own lives and where we're at. That's a huge part of recovery.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you're in addiction, if you're trapped in the disease and you're blaming people, if you're still saying, if you had my wife, you'd drink too, or if you had my parents, you'd do this too, that's the problem, right? You're still blaming people instead of owning it for yourself.
Right. Sweeping off our part of the street, I call it. And there's a huge, huge thing. It's the whole concept of, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about me. It also talks about resentment being the number one killer. Like more people relapse and have breakdowns and anger, whatever it is, over resentment. And
right.
So
and isn't it crazy? We're reliving something that happened a long time ago, just over and over in our minds, torturing
Yeah.
ourselves with it. The other person doesn't even know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
insanity, right?
Yeah.
And it
So-
does keep you drinking. So that's the surrender too, the peace you get from laying it down, like not having to live in that cycle of resentment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, friends, it's a lifelong deal. You know, it's taken me 5 years to forgive certain people and things. And you know, it's every day, it's a choice. It's God, you know, like they say, do it, and then your heart will line up. It's like, okay, God, I choose to forgive again today. Help me to forgive, right? It's like I believe, help my unbelief. You know?
And for me, what was huge is forgiving myself. That was a really big one. Like,
Yeah.
forgiving myself, because I think I was the last person I forgave. And then, like you said too, remembering that I'm forgiving whoever, not for them, but for me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's
You
not
know.
about them at all, right?
Right. Well, Lisa, how can people get a hold of you? What's your website?
So
Or
lisatannert.com, and there's an
Awesome.
email list there, and then
nice.
my link tree is there, so all of my social media stuff is available there, and hopefully news of my book will be available there soon too. And yeah.
And
so
you've
just
got a great
lisagreffen.com.
you have a great blog too, right?
No, those are some excerpts from the book.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, cool. Nice.
One of these days, maybe, but
Yeah. Awesome.
we're
Well,
doing what we can.
Yeah. Well, definitely check out Lisa's website and
Yeah, thank you.
listen to episode 138 too.
I
So
appreciate it. And
yeah.
it was really nice seeing you again.
I know.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
great.
Gosh. Well, thank you, Lisa, so much for coming back on the show again.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. I had a good time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, friends, for listening to Genuine Life Recovery, playing on your favorite app or on my website at jodystevens.org. It's JODIESTEVENS, jodystevens.org. There you can check out my podcast, blog, recovery coaching info, speaking, and more. Check it out.